My name is Ibram X. Kendi. I'm a professor in the United States. I'm also an author and scholar who studies the history of racism and being anti-racist. To be anti-racist is to advocate for policies and practices and rules that lead to racial equity between the racial groups, that create racial justice for everyone, that creates a society where everyone, well, I should say no one is rejected or demeaned because of the color of their skin or their religion or their background. And I think the difference between being anti-racist and not racist is, frankly, typically when people are being racist and they're challenged for being racist, their response to that challenge is, I'm not racist. By contrast, to be anti-racist, when we actually do something that's racist, we actually acknowledge it. You know what, I didn't realize that that idea that I said about black people was racist. Thank you for pointing it out. I'm not gonna say it anymore. I'm gonna change, I'm gonna grow, I'm gonna be anti-racist. We have to actively teach children that we should not connect skin color to behavior, to quality. You know, someone's skin color is just as irrelevant as the color of one's clothes. And we have to actively teach young people that. Otherwise, they're gonna assume that certain people have more because they are more. In the United States, researchers have conducted studies to see what type of impact, let's say, having black teachers have on black elementary school students. And what researchers have found is that black students, particularly black students who come from challenging environments, actually do better academically when they have black teachers. And they've also found that in certain cases, white students do better with black teachers, you know, as well. So I certainly would say that, you know, we should have, you know, as diverse a teaching force, you know, as possible. I think that every student should be able to have a teacher or multiple teachers who look like them and understand their background and culture, you know, as they're matriculating through school. I think one of the first actions, particularly European nations can take is reparations. I think reparations allows European nations, first and foremost, to recognize that slavery and colonialism was first and foremost systems of extraction, financial extraction, in which those territories overseas became poorer and poorer and European nations became richer and richer. And you can't separate the riches of Europe, you know, and let's say the poverty of, you know, of a continent like Africa from slavery and colonialism. And so I think first and foremost for European nations to recognize that in terms of that is the cause of the disparity, not because the Europeans are superior or they manage money better or they're so, you know, have so much ingenuity compared to, you know, African people. It's because of colonialism and slavery. And so after recognizing that, of course, providing reparations to the descendants of, you know, of enslaved and potentially even colonized peoples. There was a time in which it was believed that slavery would be permanent. You know, even in Spain, that, you know, some of the first African people who were taken from Africa were brought to Spain. And it was imagined that this enslavement, this transatlantic human trade was permanent. But very sort of powerful and committed activists and people rallied together, particularly in the late 1700s and certainly in the 1800s to stop the human trade, ultimately to stop chattel slavery. There was all sorts of decolonization movements all over the world, you know, in the 19th and 20th centuries. And there was a time in which people believed that colonialism would be eternal. And so I think if we could wage global movements against human trading, against slavery, against colonialism, you know, then why can't we wage global movements, you know, against racism or even local movements against racism in Barcelona?